Welcome to Real Talk. My name is Med.
My name is Charlie.
Today we've got an interesting conversation.
We're going true crime.
Yeah, we are going true crime.
It's so weird how there is such a fixation with true crime, and you do sometimes, I think, become really desensitized to it.
Today we're going to be talking about the Idaho 4.
Very, very famous case, true crime case that has kind of blown up on social media. It happened back in 2022, so it was November 2022, so it's been like 2.5 years. The trial is coming up in August, so I think it's kind of like re-emerged online and people are talking about it a lot. It's one of the saddest cases that I've probably read about, just given the victims and kind of the story itself and the aftermath of everything. But it's really interesting as well. There's so much to unpack with this.
There's so much to unpack. And the thing for me is that everyone's kind of just, what's happened?
Yeah, so basically, let's do a real quick recap of the case and kind of everything that went down. So, the crime took place on November 13th, 2022 in kind of the early hours of the morning. I think from what I've seen, the current report is that it took place sometime between 4 a.m. and 4:40 a.m.
Yep.
So it's kind of within that hour.
Yep. And
the victims were Ethan Chapin, my apologies if I say any of these names wrong, Xana Canodal, Madison Mogan, and Kaylee Goncalves. So these were all students of the University of Idaho, and they all lived in this big house together. Well, there were two other girls that lived in the house as well. So the Ethan was the boyfriend of Xana.
Yep.
So he was just visiting. The people who lived in the house were Xana, Madison, Kaylee, and then these two other girls, Dylan and Bethany, who were unharmed.
It was just a normal evening and for students coming in late, and they've got in and around 4 a.m. when people were starting to go into sleep, the couple ordered food. So this is how they managed to track down the timings of all this stuff, because everything was time stamped with certain things that were certain events were happening throughout the night.
Basically, in the early hours of the morning, approximately around 4:20 a.m., a perpetrator entered the home. Two of the girls that were unharmed, one of them was on the first floor. So this was a big house. There were multiple floors. One of them was on the first floor and one of them was in the basement.
Yeah.
From what we know, the perpetrator entered the house and skipped both of those rooms and went straight upstairs and then murdered the 4 people who were staying in the second floor and above. One other thing that was really interesting about some of the eyewitness accounts from the surviving roommates, obviously the one who had said that she saw a figure dressed all in black with the bushy eyebrows, really creepy. But the other interesting part is that one of the housemates reported hearing noises during the early hours, including what she thought was Goncalves, who was Xana, playing with her dog that she had.
That she shared with her ex.
And also hearing some crying sounds coming from one of the other girls' rooms.
Suspicious.
Accompanied by a male voice that apparently said something along the lines of, "It's okay, I'm going to help you." Now, this hasn't been confirmed whether that was potentially the perpetrator or whether it was Ethan, who was the only other male that we know was at the property at the time. I think that that's just quite an interesting fact, because it plays into this idea of, if she was able to hear a whisper, why were there no sounds of the murders then taking place? Which I can imagine there would have been screams or cries or...
Did you say the dog was there?
The dog also was found afterwards, alive and unharmed.
And it didn't bark, it didn't do anything.
This is what I mean.
What the hell?
It's that, again, quite a lot of unanswered things. One of the things that people have found really crazy about this case is that a 911 call wasn't made until almost midday the next day. Okay. So these murders supposedly took place around 4 a.m. However, the girls, the 2 surviving girls, didn't contact the police until approximately, 8 hours later?
Do you reckon they were that scared, or...?
There doesn't seem to be a lot of clarification as to why it took them so long to contact the police. Even if you thought something was amok, like...
You're calling the police.
Do you know what I mean?
I think there's an intruder in my house. Even if you're texting each other, and I think Surely you would text Xana and be like...
I think they were texting the others and they weren't responding. But that again then should have been a bit of a warning sign.
Yeah, exactly.
Because they knew that they were awake, or at least they might have presumed that they were awake given the fact that they had only gotten in a few hours prior. Let's talk about Bryan.
Yeah, let's talk about Bryan.
Long story short, this horrific crime happens, and about approximately a month later, this man called Bryan Christopher Kohberger is arrested in connection with the crime. Something also that's quite important, so he was a teaching assistant at Washington State University, and a few weeks prior to when the murders took place, I'm pretty sure, he was actually called up by his supervisors and they had to have a meeting about his behavior and conduct.
Months before the murder.
Yeah.
He actually got stopped in the area where the house was.
In his car?
For not wearing a seatbelt.
Okay.
Right? And then about 5 weeks after the actual murders happened, he got stopped for being too close to another car.
Okay.
And then literally 9 minutes later, he got stopped again with his dad in the car. He played it really cool and just... I think that's really telling of a murderer, if they're just very calm and collective.
Even when they're around police.
Exactly. But they let him go again. They let him go both times. And then obviously that's...
I think he was just given verbal warnings, I'm
yeah.
pretty sure. Which probably is standard in that like occurrence. But it's kind of crazy to know that like police had so many interactions with him. There's been quite a lot of stuff now that he's been arrested and he's kind of the main suspect in this. There has been a lot of discussion about his past, who he was, kind of previous indiscretions. So there's this bar in the area, which I actually think that bars in London should start doing this because I think it's a really clever system. So it was a bar where when you arrived and the security checked your ID or whatever, they scanned your ID. And then basically, if there were ever any complaints made about you or any kind of notes that staff would need to know, those notes were attached to your ID.
I think they do that. You
Really?
know the ID scanners things?
I haven't had my ID scanned in ages.
I've not been out in ages,
But yeah, so apparently a number of staff members and patrons of the bar had complained about Bryan and his behavior. Apparently he was going up to groups of women asking really inappropriate questions like, are you alone? Where do you live?
Oh my God.
That type of stuff. So he had a lot of almost like X's next to his name. So then one time when he tried to go back into the bar, this was flagged on the system and the owner of the bar had to basically go over to him and be like, you can't
come in.
Yeah. So yeah, basically lots of stuff came out about him following his arrest. He was arrested on December 30th, 2022. So just over a month after the murders. And he was arrested at his parents' home in Pennsylvania and then extradited back to Idaho where the murder took place. Let's talk about the evidence that connects Bryan to this murder. Why was he accused of this?
First things first.
Yeah.
He bought his knife and this sheath on Amazon, right?
Yeah.
The main thing that kind of connects him to it is the fact that they found his DNA on the sheath.
Because they've never found a murder weapon, which is kind of insane. Like, why would you leave the sheath there? Like, why would you be careful enough to make sure you kept the murder weapon and got rid of it in a good way that police weren't going to be able to find it, but then leave the sheath at the scene of the crime,
which they managed to track back to the purchase, which he also had the knife for.
Do you know what I mean? Like,
but also his records show that he was actually there because his phone was pinging off, and also he turned his phone off between 2 and 4 or 2 and 5. And when he got questioned about that, he said that he was stargazing.
Well, that was his alibi about the whole thing, was that he was stargazing all night and that he likes to go for drives because it calms him.
I wonder if they're going to stream this
They're going to.
Oh, they are going to stream it. Oh.
So interestingly enough, actually, I just saw a TikTok about this the other day. The judges ruled that there won't be any media outlets allowed in the court. However, they are going to stream it from inside of the courtroom, and that will be available for people at home to watch.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
You're going to be watching that.
100%. Are you joking?
Yeah.
It's going to be so interesting.
I think it's going to be massive.
Yeah, I think we're going to discover a lot more crazy shit that went down in the house and about him as well.
Yeah, I agree.
That's gonna blow this case wide open.
Thank you. If you enjoyed that episode, then leave a comment. Let us know what you think as well.
Yeah, tell us your theories in the comments, but like in a respectful way.
And best theory wins, and we'll read it out on the next episode. On that note, thank you for watching Real Talk. See you later.
See ya.